Hello everybody, happy Sunday. Welcome back to the Yard and Gardens. What an interesting morning it's been. I hope you can hear me okay over the wind. Just rescued a bat from the siding on our house. That video will be up on the outdoor channel today, tomorrow, somewhere along those lines. Got to edit it. I'm going to give you fair warning now. There's a fair bit of blood, but the bat seems to be okay. All's well that ends well. So, yes, a little bit of a delay, and it's not as bright and sunny as maybe I'd like, but we're going to be out here today taking a look at the entire Yard and Gardens, well, as much as weather will allow for. So be sure to grab yourself a beverage, get somewhere comfortable, and we'll get started. You know, I learned a fair bit about gardening out here in Manitoba this year, and in particular, I learned a lot about tomatoes. As you can see here, this soil is a little desert-like, a little cracked, caked, dry. I am not on top of watering my container tomatoes enough to really get away with growing them in this style. I might be able to get away with peppers next year. So one thing I learned this year, no planters for tomatoes. The bunker garden, sure. Planters, forget it. So something else I learned this year is tomatoes do a little bit better over here than I had anticipated, but still not quite well enough. I've seen most of these varieties, well, the ones that I've previously grown, I have seen them grow larger, more productive plants. That said though, still did better than I expected because of the amount of shade thrown by those trees. This year though, definitely learned that tomatoes, they're a bondage plant. Expect to tie them up, definitely keep them off the ground as best you can, or those suckers are going to rot. You're going to watch your crop fall apart right before your eyes. I have thoroughly enjoyed growing this many varieties of tomatoes this year though, and I'm having a lot of fun playing around with various ways to preserve my tomato harvest. And I am completely enjoying wandering around, nibbling as I go. Here's a look at those unpronounceable tomatoes from Rob Bob. Looks like we got, what, 1, 4, so 5 on here. These leaves are not looking fantastic, but does look like it wants to be a very large fruit. Now you gotta bear in mind, I really don't water these things very often. And when I do water them, I'm out here with the can, they get like 4 seconds, and then I walk on to the next plant. And as it is, that still takes me, let's see, 4 times 2, so 8 gallons, roughly. But there's an awful lot of plants, so that's only really a few cups per plant when you get right down to it. And that really kind of only happens once every couple of weeks. So in-ground tomatoes, another tomato lesson this year, Quelle Surprise, but in-ground tomatoes definitely seems to be the way to go for me. Here we've got all those lemon boys grown in the planters, dry as a bone, because they don't have the rest of the area to spread the roots out, kind of suck up all that available moisture, the same as these post-hole tomatoes do. Now that post-hole thing, that was interesting. I still haven't decided if that was a good idea or a bad idea or what, but it did definitely allow each of these plants more than enough room, as it turned out, so that they weren't competing with each other for nutrients or light or, well, much of anything. Mowing around this, especially once we got the riding mower, massive pain in the tuchus. But I did basically get it figured out. Should have come through here more often with the push mower, cleaned up the edges. Season's not over yet, it just feels like it is. The tomato potato bunker here has turned out to be a brilliant idea. Oh, where did you go? Friend garter snake here was just hanging out, so that's excellent. I knew there had to be one living in this bunker, because I've seen no evidence of slugs. Must have gone down behind that planter. Nice long snake though, I wish I could have caught it on camera to share it with you. But This is the Sweet Aroma Hybrid. Look at that. That's a nice looking mater. So yeah, this year I've learned if you want to do a raised bed garden that will hold enough water for tomatoes, give that sucker like 8-10 inches of lawn clippings before you start throwing your soil on top of that, or your compost or whatever. And like, remember, in this case, each one of these 6 plants that I initially put in here for this year only got like maybe half a gallon of soil when they were planted in. So that's fascinating. That is truly fascinating. Here we've got the beets. Remember, I just pulled up all the leftover dead brassica type crops, and see if we can focus in a little bit better there. Zoom, camera, zoom. You see that? A little row of beet seedlings. And it's not just one, because if we go over to the side, it's a second little row of beet seedlings. And find it in the camera. The third row's there. Just a little more sporadic on that one. Thinking of seeds, the seed pods on these, well, they're not really pods, they're like seed stalks, we'll say, on this chard plant, coming along quite nicely. I don't know if many of you recall the previous video where I saved chard seeds, but I'm basically just going to let this sucker finish out the season, die, dry on the plant, and a huge number of these will turn out to be viable seeds. It's a really easy plant to save seeds from, and apparently they're good for like 6 years, because the ones I planted this year chard from, 2012 seeds, right? That chard, on the other hand, completely random. Too bad it didn't go to seed for me, but what do you do? What do you do? Final proof of being an eggplant. Because, like, producing flowers way too late in the season isn't totally the way eggplants grow around here. Such a cool leaf, though. I need to find a really early season, quick producing variety. Actually start to grow some aubergine. I believe that's what they're called everywhere else, isn't it? Eggplants here, aubergine elsewhere. The Chaos Garden here has pretty much run its course. And harvest a few of these suspicious looking tops. But they are just kind of a grainy seed type thing. And the fish do seem to like them. So free food is free food. Can't see much still going on with those yellow beans down there. There may be 1 or 2. Not much to email home about there. But this has basically been fallow this year. So I imagine most of this stuff is just going to get cut down, laid down. Grass laid over it. Probably just plant straight into it next year. Go with that whole no-till thing. Which ought to be real interesting when we get around to planting over the pit. The compost pit that has received so many things over the last few months. Fascinating. We got the radish and the thistle bed here. I've checked these pods a few times. Oh, those look like they might be actually ready. So I'll check those a little later on when I don't have a handful of tomatoes. But it looks like I'm going to get some good radish seeds, at least. And I have eaten a lot of these radish pods while they were young and tender. So that's cool. And I hear tell of radish seeds that I'm going to be sent basically not for the bulbs that they produce, but for the pods that they produce. I'm really excited. That sounds really quite cool. You know me, I love to try growing new and different things. Maybe a little less thistle next year. It is so pretty though, and even now we got a big fat bumbler floating around in there. It's hard to tell nature no. I'm just not good with that. Oh, the carrots. You know, one thing I learned this year, carrots really do not need to be anywhere near as well spaced as it says on the package. They really will shove each other around with no real problems. Let's pull some of this back. Look at this, you know. These are not terribly unhappy carrots. We'll just pull this whole cluster out. They're not huge, But I'm growing a shorter variety of carrot anyway. These are like Danvers, something like that. Shocks pulled one out the other day. It was a monster. But I mean, there you go, quick pull. Look how clean these things are coming out. Sure, some of them are all like miniature little carrot wannabes. And that's going to happen when you overplant things. That is nature's solution for being overplanted. At the same time, though, in the space where I should have had 2 carrots, even with the stunted ones, I've got a couple of babies, you know, stunteds, got some babies, I got a funky one there, and I got some pretty sizable carrots because they grew like this instead of like that. So yes, I have definitely learned that patience is good when it comes to carrots. You can put them a lot closer together than anyone ever told me. And you can easily get the value of your seed pack back. So I'll be growing more carrots. Probably not in this bed next year though, probably moving one over. But at the same time, from a lot of the stuff I've been watching with Charles Dowding, I think I may have mentioned him to y'all before, and some of you may have mentioned him to me. Planting the same crop year after year in a no-dig situation, kind of a less of a concern than it is, in a traditional garden. What the heck? Because as you're adding more compost, we'll just bury that carrot back up. As you're adding more compost, it's putting the nutrients back into the soil, so you're not actually depleting anything, therefore you're not actually pulling in the pests, or however that works. Okay, you know what, I was going to be done, but I got to harvest those 2. I got to see what's going on. Kind of funky. Look at that. Oh, bugs, buddy. Good deal. So we've begun kind of dehydrating some of these carrots because we don't want them going bad, right? Don't grow it to waste it, grow it to keep it. We've also been dehydrating some of the carrot tops because apparently you can use these sparingly, but kind of like a parsley in soups and stuff. So that's cool, and I'm enjoying the double harvest, especially considering I wasn't expecting to get much of anything at all out of here. I had kind of given up on them, and when they did start sprouting up, I thought they were weeds, but lo and behold, carrots. So all of these, from, well, 4 inches there, maybe 2 feet of row. Not the world's most amazing harvest, but that's probably the best I've ever done with carrots in my life. And there's still all that to go. Fantastic. Oh, good year, very educational, you know? That's kind of what I'm driving at with this particular video today. This year I learned that corn really does need to be properly spaced out if it's going to produce anything for you. And if you do space it, it is more likely to produce. So that's good. I mean, here we've got 3 stalks nice and close together, right? And you can see they've all produced, technically. But look how short these ears are, right? This one's just so tiny in general, and this one's, you know, might have a few decent kernels on it. We go about half a cob each at dinner, so like that's good for one of us at this point. But let's look at one of the ones that's got better space. Now, we got this one here. Much nicer looking. Looks like a lot more of those kernels have been fertilized. That's going to be just way nicer. Going to get more kernels out of this one than we're going to get out of all 3 of those. So this year I learned, don't screw around. Space your corn. But peas are perfectly happy to grow in between those spaces. So I don't have to worry about wasting space. That's cool. I'll tell you something else I learned this year. I am hooked on the idea of mulching to reduce weed growth. This charcoal situation has worked out really well. Not a lot of weeds have been popping up through there. And of course, we know from previous years, lawn clippings, my avid love of lawn clippings, And it does make a huge difference. I'm pulling a lot less weeds from here. Nature is not cool with a vacuum. Anywhere there's open dirt, she's going to try and put a plant in it. It's just the way it grows. You know, here you can see the base of the corn. This is where I never made it to mulching. And what do you know? Big monster weeds sucking away the nutrients that should be used for my corn. Okay, here we've got some better spaced corn. You know, I definitely learned some valuable lessons about corn this year. Oh, ho, ho, ho. This year I learned, again, we're back on the tomatoes. Tie these puppies up if you want them to produce. Keep them up off the ground. And they love the bunker garden. Love, love, love the bunker garden. These ones that are up, not leaning on stuff, what do you know? No blossom end rot. So there's a lot of talk about that being a nutrient deficiency, but it might really just be, you know, standard rot from moisture. It happens, you know. We sometimes really unnecessarily overcomplicate things, and we do ourselves no favors when we do that. Nice sized tomato. I think my favorite out of these three has been the Celebrity Hybrid in the middle here. It's very consistent size and shape, which I'm sure is what they bred it for. They're all about this size, they're all about this shape, and they take a much nicer red color than this, but this will ripen up inside, no concern. Just going to add it to my little harvest pile for today as we go. I mean, sure, these Better Boy hybrids produce some very nice looking tomatoes. Good size, good shape. They're going to be monsters if they've got the opportunity. But too big. You know, more of these ones seem to have deficiency issues than these ones. This is the bush beefsteak improved, you know. It's got so many maters on it, I can't keep this thing off the ground. It's broken itself and folded over on the tomato cage. It's producing beautiful little tomatoes. Oh, see, now here we've got one that has been up off the ground, and it does have the blossom end rot. But this is also taken to the theory of the earlier tomatoes are the ones that are screwed up because the roots hadn't really formed enough to kind of pull it in from the whole bunker. Interesting. Really excited there. Alright, well, I'll toss that into the compost and it can feed future generations of plants. But of the three of them, it's the Celebrity in the middle that has been my performer. So I think I'll be growing a lot more of those as my medium-sized tomato. Oh, my future potato beds. Looking forward to getting into those. Let's see, peppers. What did I learn about peppers this year, Mr. Bear? Oh gosh, so many things. So many things. That should probably be its own video, but I have been killing my peppers with kindness. And that has been, I think, my most painful lesson of this year. A lot of the aphid wars situations may simply have been because I wanted my plants to grow bigger, stronger, faster. I was giving them too much. Aphids are nature's solution to that. So I'm going to try depriving things and see if I learned that about peppers this year. Oh, here's one. This year I learned sugar rushes never ripen. You can't really see the color as well on my camera as I would like, because in real life this one has way more of a peach color than is coming up on the camera. This one still has none of that at all, but here through the viewfinder, doesn't look anywhere near as extreme. Trust me, this one is taking some color. Not there yet, of course, but it's on the way. Maybe. Not holding my breath, but maybe. This year I learned random logs make fantastic, well, elevators for container gardens. This is a really weird look that I've been thoroughly enjoying, and I will be doing it again. This year I also learned that I do not care for these fabric planters for tomatoes. Love them for herbs, right? Like these things have all done really well. grooving on the results with this Nepalese bell here, because this, by all rights, should be dead. But the tomatoes have pretty much looked dead for most of the season, aside from that cherry variety, the mini pear in the middle, which even since I just harvested the other day has ripened up a whole bunch more of those. But the Manitoba there should have grown larger tomatoes in general and more of them. It didn't. This is another bush beefsteak. Definitely should have grown more and larger tomatoes. Really not very productive at all. Won't be growing tomatoes in those. Every year, you're learning, right? Learning as you grow. Cucamelons. I already knew just how much I love these things, but didn't really realize just how drought tolerant they were. This year I learned that building really silly raised bed gardens can still result in some pretty quick results. I've harvested, what, half a dozen mini tomatoes off of this thing. This thing is throwing off flowers. They'll never get a chance to actually ripen up to anything, but got some beans along the back that are giving it a go. Let me change angles, show you what's growing on there. Are these going to be massive beans for the end of the season? Heck no, but you know what? They're good for a quick, fresh nibble, aren't they? Anything with grain's got some chlorophyll in it, so that's always good for us too. And considering how recently this garden was built, and then, you know, a bit of a delay planted, I will take tiny string beans as my reward for finally getting around to building this. Gonna put the garlic in it for over the winter, and hopefully it'll be good to go in the spring, because this is kind of a raised bed garden, so the soil area shouldn't be flooded, right? Like the rest of the gardens flood. This one shouldn't. Very excited. We'll see if I learn something there in the spring. Hopefully I learned something positive if I do learn something. Ooh, this year I learned you can make leeks suffer for a ridiculously long time in a styrofoam cup, and they will still try and grow when you put them out. But you know, aside from the joy of making them suffer, you don't really get much of anything from it. Not a learning, but this year I finally got around to giving Gus a permanent home. Grow for us, Gus. Grow. Ooh, this year I learned chard can make a beautiful front row garden. Got ridiculously huge here. Some would say too big, because it gets kind of bitter as it gets bigger, but that doesn't really bother me. I like bitter stuff. It cleans out the liver. Oh, this matchbox pepper is doing so good. Got some nice red in there. It's fantastic. I'm saving those bottom ones for seeds. This paper lantern. Ooh, hoo, hoo. This year I learned I think I have a new favorite, habanero. That was tasty. Even only at the orange stage, it had some good light me up factor. Even in Manitoba, this sucker is dropping pods all over the place. So if I was growing this in a greenhouse, oh yeah, buddy. Got this one here ripening up. That'll make number 3 on the tree this year. So that's not huge, right? Like, but I'm only competing with myself. I garden for Zen, and I recommend the rest of you do too. But anyway, here we've got the red demons still holding true to their form. So fantastic. Nice sharp little pepper. Literally, you could like stab somebody with one of these. Nice to see some color on it, but I think might be a little bit setting in on that, so we'll watch that in the coming weeks, which are probably the last of the season out here. Oh, yeah, Oro is getting a lovely orange to this batch. Could have sworn last year's peppers only kind of got yellowy, so that's where I picked those. That's why I was saying, Dave, let me know if those do sprout for you, and I won't worry about it. And if they don't, we'll take some from these oranger peppers. Clearly the flesh is more developed, maybe the seed will be as well. Yahia Huchapan, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe getting on time to clip this down a little bit. Take off those pods, might be one of the ones that moves in first. I don't want to lose either of these 2 pepper plants, because this one has made just such a pretty waterfall. Really comes right down to it. I want to keep it because it's pretty. But it's been very, very productive as well. And you know, this is a carryover from last year, so I really don't want to lose it. and I would like to carry it over as well as, you know, hopefully plant, I don't know, maybe a dozen more of them. Growing a dozen of these would be great. That'd be a good pepper harvest at the end of the season, you know. Yeah. The 2016 sand dollar, this baby will definitely be coming in. Not quite sure what room she'll be going to, but lots of pods forming on here, lots of flowers set in here. It's been comfortably established in this planter for quite some time, so it should be okay there. It's just a matter of don't overwater it, Mr. Bear, and don't give it too many nutrients, and you know, avoid the aphids, and yada yada yada. You guys know, you've been around, you see it. And I guess that's about a wrap. If I missed anything in particular that you wanted to see, let me know in the comments below, and I'll make sure we take a look at that in the coming days. But I felt a few raindrops, and while this may not be the best camera out there, it's the only one I got, and it ain't waterproof, so I am headed inside. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this weekly wander around the yard and gardens to see what's growing on. I may see you tomorrow. It is a Monday, so it's probably a me day. But yeah, I don't know. I may have a video up. I may do something live. Who knows? I'll definitely be back on Tuesday though. So for now, we'll just say I will see you then. Take care, everybody.